Buddy, this is Marty from Dawgs blog. Tonight's podcast on the Frank Carson. Oh, I've got things messed up here. Oh, there we go. On the Frank Carson. Good evening, everybody. I got started over. I'm sorry. Good evening, everybody. This is Marty from Dawgs blog on the tonight's podcast on the Frank Carson et al. Trial. One quick note I'd like to make. There was a question that was asked yesterday on my Facebook page. And I think it was an interesting question asking if somebody's... This thing just messed up on me again. An interesting question. If somebody is impeached, does their testimony get stricken from the record or anything like that? But the answer is no. And I did put some answers up there. Definition of impeachment in regards to witnesses, and it's just about basically what it comes down to. Jury gets to decide on what story they're going to believe, and it's going to be kind of interesting with Robert Woody what story that they're going to believe. This is what it all comes down to. I'm sorry, Robert Woody should have been on the stand a long time ago. That's all there is to it. So anyway, so no, it's just the information for the jury to decide what they're going to do, and that's it. It gives them, they decide if he's credible, not credible, what have you. So that's what it. I got all kinds of things going on here. What the heck? Okay, so that's the bottom line there. So I do have my Facebook page open. If anybody has any messages, they can send a private message. You can send it person on Dawgs blog page on notifications. I'll get a notification of it no matter where you send it. So you have your questions, feel free. So the afternoon session started around 1:35 with not too bad, with the jury in the room, the judge on the bench, and the Jai Gohel's doing his cross on Robert Woody, and he kept telling Kurt Bunch and John Evers, and I think Jacobson was in and out of the room on this thing, that things acting funny. Okay, that he didn't know anything. Rob, and when I'm going to say correct, this is how Robert Woody was answering questions today. Jai Gohel would ask him, did you say that Kurt Bunch and John Evers tell them that he didn't know anything? He'd say correct. He wouldn't say yes. He wouldn't say no. He'd say correct. Or sometimes he'd throw a yeah in there. When he was denying involvement, law enforcement officers did not believe him, and Kurt Bunch told him the denials were useless because basically they had his admission on tape with a Miranda Dykes wire. He says correct. Kurt Bunch convinced Robert Woody that his denials made it worse. He did not recall that part, and I'm going to just refer to DNR, did not recall. There's a lot of that with Robert Woody, and so he refreshed his transcript. Then he says, yep, correct, you're right. Did Kurt Bunch say it wasn't too late to correct his statement? He said correct. On 3/14 of 14, he had a conversation with Steve Jacobson during a transportation. Now remember, Robert Woody was held at the Tuolumne County Jail for some time because they felt that they kept trying to convince Robert Woody his life was in danger from Frank Carson and the Outlaw brothers. So they didn't even want him in the same jail together. So they housed Robert Woody at Tuolumne County Jail. So Steve Jacobson was doing the transportations from Tuolumne County down to Stanislaus County on court days and whenever they needed something to interview. And they would have special visitations at the district attorney's office for Robert Woody and his mom and his family. In fact, they'd buy him food and stuff too. So one of those transportations on 3/14/14, he had a conversation with Steve Jacobson during the transportation. He told Steve Jacobson he was not present when Corey Kaufman died. He says correct. He told Steve Jacobson he knew nothing about it. And Jai kind of went right into the next question. I really didn't wait for an answer on that one. And said Bobby and Dee Atwell did not have anything to do as far as he knew. And he continued to deny involvement to Kurt Bunch, Mike Brody, Dale Lingerfeld. He says correct. So he was saying correct to all those questions above. It was kind of just a question that kept rolling on. He told Steve Jacobson he was not involved. In addition, he told his attorneys in an interview about that time also. So Jai Gohel asked him, you denied it to everybody. He says, correct. In an 8/14/15 interview, that date sound familiar? That's a date that Frank Carson, all the people were taken into custody, including Georgia DiFilippo, Christine DiFilippo, Walter Wells, Eddie Quintanar, Scott McFarland, Bobby and Dee Atwell, and Frank Carson. What they did was that day that they were going to be taken to the jail and booked, all those people I just mentioned, they had Woody over at the sheriff's office watching those guys all those people go to jail. They kind of paraded him in front of him, I guess to give him a nice, safe feeling, or trying to get him to talk to more because they're making movement on this. So after they paraded all these people by Robert Woody, they did an interview. That's with Sergeant Dombey and Steve Jacobson. Now remember, Sergeant Dombey and then Sergeant Dombey was with the California Highway Patrol. And he was doing I saw that interview in the prelim, and a lot of that interview, Sergeant Dombey was taking the lead on it and talking a lot about the homicide and stuff. And Sergeant Dombey is a traffic cop that got to have some fun playing cop for a change. It was embarrassing the way he acted in there, and Steve Jacobson was no better. They asked him in the interview if he made the threats to Corey Kaufman on Johnson Street in front of Corey's house at the time. He said he could not remember. He told investigators, though, in the interview, you guys are pushing me to it. You're trying to make me answer and push me into your certain answer. They wanted more info that he could produce. And he says, I don't recall if they said that or not, but I know they were pushing me. In the preliminary transcript, he was being refreshed by Jai Gohel, and he said, yes, that's correct. That's what I said about they wanted him to give more info than he could produce. That's what he said at the prelim. He felt that Kurt Bunch and Steve Jacobson were also being very hostile and drilling on him, and he said yes. They were working him over pretty good. And I don't believe that was the August 2014 interview. In 2014, he made a call from the jail to his dad, and he said, Daddy, they want me to make up a story about the Atwells and Frank Carson. And he was asked, did he say that? And he says, yeah, I said that. The investigators want me to make up a story on the phone. This is what he's telling Dad on the phone with his dad. They want him to make up a story. He told his mom, Beverly Woody, he was being harassed during the transportations with Steve Jacobson. Steve Jacobson was telling him he's not coming clean, and he was involved. And again, he had to refresh his memory from the transcript of, I believe it was a preliminary hearing. It could have been the interview. I'm not sure which. And as to what he said, and he said, yes, that's what he said. He told his attorney on April of 2014 that the Poppenkork brothers didn't do anything. He did refresh his memory with the transcript, and that's what he told, apparently, Bruce Perry. He said he did tell a number of mistruths. He said correct. And said because that's what investigators wanted to hear because they were putting so much pressure on him. November 4th of 2014 interview with his private investigator asked if law enforcement officers said anything to him during the bathroom break. Remember, this is the bathroom break. He was arrested on February 28th, 2014. He turned himself in around 8 o'clock at night or whenever he got arrested or how it came about. And that interview went 7 hours into the next day on 3/1/14. So you may hear both dates on that. So his private investigator asked him if law enforcement said anything to him during this bathroom break. They took a break. Kirk Bunch said in the room, before they left the room to take him to the bathroom, we're not going to talk about this at all during the break. Well, they talked about it during the break. Somebody did. I just lost my spot. Oh, and they told him to tell them what they wanted to hear. And he says, he was asked, is that the truth? And he says, yes. In the August 14th of 2015 interview with Dombey and Steve Jacobson, they said the story he told on March 1st of 2014 in regards to the altercation on the Frank Carson property, if he told that if he said the same story, he says he didn't recall. He was asked if if he told the investigators a lie. He did not recall. Again, talking about the August 2014 interview, they had to refresh his with the transcript to refresh his memory. He said, yeah, he did. They did that, meaning that they were trying to get him to repeat what he said before on the March 1st interview. He asked if the earlier interview was a lie, and he says at this point he doesn't know. Sergeant Dombey said they weren't. Oh, they were past the point when he was trying to show that he lied. So he did tell them that he lied. Was trying to tell them he lied. This is after all the others have taken into custody. And Sergeant Dombey says, well, it's too late. You can't unring the bell now. So they were past that point. He can't tell him anything different, is what Dombey was trying to tell him. He was talking at the sheriff's office and was taken there initially. Again, I said to see all the other defendants being taken into the jail at the safety center. Then he had the interview. Going back to March 1st of 2014, he told Kurt Bunch and John Evers that he didn't know anything. He said correct. When he was denying any involvement, law enforcement officers didn't believe him, meaning Kurt Bunch, John Evers, and I guess Jacobson was there. Early in the interview with Steve Jacobson, Jacobson asked him if he got to see that the people were arrested. And Dombey had told him there's no going back on statements now. They're in custody. And that's going back to the March 1st of 2014 statements. On July 22nd, 2016, he had an interview with Marlissa Ferreira and Steve Jacobson. And they talked about Beverly Woody had testified in the preliminary hearing in April, I believe it was, of 2016. And Beverly Woody had visited Woody at the jail, Robert at the jail, and this is when he was still, I guess, here, or maybe it was at Tuolumne, whatever jail it was. And she had a piece of paper that she had put up to the window at the jail, the visiting area. There's glass in between the inmate and the visitor. And was telling him this is what he needs to say if he wants to get out of jail. Okay? Remember, this piece of paper had writing on it telling him what he needs to say. And I'm not going to be rude or anything right now, but I'm sorry, Beverly Woody does not know how to read or write. She admitted that in the preliminary hearing when she testified. And he was told to say Frank Carson was on the property while she was holding the paper up to the window, and also telling him to say Walter Wells was on the property, and in fact told him to get back in there and clean up the mess after the alternation. He didn't know at the time, though, what she had testified to in the court, and she said that Robert Woody came home that night and told him this long story about what had happened over on the properties and all kinds of stuff. He had relayed the information that was on the paper to Marlissa Ferreira and Steve Jacobson. And he wanted to know if his mother could get in trouble. Now, he didn't recall if he asked that or not, but it's in the transcript, and he said yes, he did ask that. Beverly Woody got on the stand and testified that Robert told her that after he came home that night, and they're talking about March 30th of 2012, after the altercation at the Carson property, and he buried the body at Poppencork, this is what Beverly Woody was saying, that Robert Woody came home and told her all about it, and that Walter Wells was there, Frank Carson was there, Frank Carson took the gun, all that stuff, and the gun disappeared. That's what Beverly Woody testified to. It was not true. Now, Robert Woody was concerned about his mother getting in trouble. This is a story that was concocted, appears to have been concocted by Beverly Woody or the family or somebody else. He was asked if he cared about his mother. He says, of course he does. He said that's why he lied. He tried to back up her story. Again, I said this, I think, in one of the previous podcasts. Robert Woody had told his attorney in April of 2016, and this is about the time that Beverly Woody was taking the stand, that Walter Wells and Frank Carson were not there. He was saying a lot of things, a lot of people weren't there, but Beverly Woody is telling him what he needs to say to get out of jail, to get his deal. And there's a phone call where they're telling him, both his son Woodrow and Beverly are telling him, this is what you need to do this to get out of jail, get your deal. And she went to the jail with that piece of paper that put up to the window telling him this is how he's going to get out of jail. Robert Woody said in this interview in July of 2016, July 22nd, that he cares about his mom, so he lied. He did not want her to get into trouble. And he's saying, yeah, that's true. He was asked, did she hold up a paper telling him what to say and lie to? And he did lie about that. He says, correct. So he admitted that. By telling those lies, is it that he wanted to please Mom by telling that story? He didn't recall, refreshed with a preliminary transcript, and he says, correct. That's what he said. He was telling those lies because he wanted to please his mom and protect his mom. So that's another reason about why he lied about Frank Carson. And Beverly Woody had testified about Walter Wells and Frank Carson being on the property and was worried about what she had done. He says he was worried and concerned. Steve Jacobson assured him that his mother would not be prosecuted for perjury. Steve Jacobson told him that Beverly Woody would not be prosecuted for perjury because of what she did in a murder case and her testimony committing perjury in a capital case. So the district attorney's office determined, in an effort to save Robert Woody's testimony, that they are not going to prosecute his mom for lying on the stand and a conspiracy, or whatever you want to call it, because somebody had to write that note for her, and she put that note up at the window and told Robert Woody, this is a lie you need to tell to get your deal and to get out of jail. And that's what he did. So there was a furtherance of that crime, and that's one of the qualifications for conspiracy. There has to be a furtherance of that crime. There it was. He did not recall if Jacobson telling him that Beverly was not going to be prosecuted. He couldn't remember if that made him feel better or not. During that July 22nd, 2016 interview, he was shown a Google map, and he drew where Walter Wells's car was, what he called his beater car, and where it was parked, and where Walter Wells was, it was another lie. He says correct. Showed where his car was. It was a lie. He says correct. Trying to make a story, he said some things and he marked some things on the map and where people were to try to make the story more believable. He didn't recall, so they went back to the preliminary testimony to refresh his memory. He says, yeah, that's what he said. He said also said he gave a lot of details to sound believable. There was a placement of people and cars on the map. Supposedly everybody was there while he's telling this lie. But that's okay. Beverly got on the stand under oath in a court of law and lied. And apparently it's acceptable. This is I just want to mention that to the people that voted for Bridget Flatiger. This is the office that she's running. I'm sorry, I can't hold back on that one. So, whatever that's worth. So he told them the lies that they would believe. He says correct. Going into that interview in July of 2016, he knew that he was going to go in there and lie. He says correct. His mother said, "Go tell the lies if you want to get out of jail faster." He said, correct. And it was like 10, 11 days later, well, when he actually did get his testimonial agreement on a capital case. He got 7 years, 4 months after he agreed, admitting to cutting off fingers and toes and all kinds of stuff that personally I don't believe happened, but we have no way of knowing that either way now because he's told so many stories. We took a break. We were only out maybe 20, 25 minutes. We came back in. Again, Jai Gohel talking about the July 22nd, 2016 interview. Remember, this is 3 months after he said many, many different things to his attorney in a private interview. For some reason, the attorney recorded it and transcribed it. And so this came out a short time later. He made statements to Marlissa Ferreira and Steve Jacobson. He was willing to lie to get a deal. He was afraid. He didn't recall saying that, but he did refresh with a preliminary text transcript, and he said correct. He did admit that he was afraid of the death penalty, so he is willing to make a deal. Now remember, they have constantly said, the district attorney's office has constantly said there were no deals in this case. He received his testimonial agreement. He got 7 years, 4 months for his part in this crime that I don't believe he had anything to do with. And he is not sentenced yet. They made an agreement, though, because they were going to have him testify earlier, too, at the prelim. But Bruce Perry, his attorney, wasn't going to let him testify until he had an agreement on his credit dates. His what they call CTS, credit for time served. Unsentenced inmates get a certain credit for time served. Sentenced inmates get a different credit for time served, and they get more credit. He was not going to testify until he got the sentencing credits for his time served. So that was kind of a hang-up for a short while, but he received his deal, and he's not sentenced. As of yet, he's still not sentenced because they want him to testify in this trial. And he's not going to be, of course, until afterwards, at least until his testimony is over. He said that Steve Jacobson was heavily involved with his transports and some other things. Apparently, Jacobson had a lot of contact with the family. Was the only one, or just about the only one, that was transporting him back and forth from Tuolumne County to Stanislaus County. Usually in the car. And there were long rides. It was over an hour ride, an hour and 15 minutes or something to come down from Tuolumne County. He was also asked during the preliminary hearing in Department 26, that was over in the old bankruptcy court. Steve Jacobson was sitting with him during breaks and lunch, along with his transportation with him back and forth to Tuolumne County. He was asked if Steve Jacobson would provide tapes and documents of interviews and reports and such. He did say yes, he was provided with some. He watched a video on August 15th, 2015 with Steve Jacobson. He said it was in a room, but he couldn't remember when, but it was on August 15th, 2015, according to the report. And so Jai Gohil goes to the preliminary hearing testimony for impeachment again on October 5th, 2016. Robert Woody testified. He watched a 7-hour video. He watched it in his cell with Steve Jacobson. So it was in the cell with Steve Jacobson that he watched these videos and had some documentation. He's also made comments that he is concerned about Steve Jacobson's credibility. I've heard that wiretap, and I believe it was during the prelim when I heard it. And that's exactly what he said. It's actually not a wiretap, it's a jail call. And he was saying it to Mom, he was saying it to Woodrow, that he needed to change his story. This is after Mom got involved on this stuff, and he was worried about his credibility, he was worried about his deal, and he was worried about Steve Jacobson's credibility. He was awful concerned about Steve Jacobson. He was asked if he's on a first-name basis with Steve Jacobs. He was asked, what do you call him? Do you call him Jake? That's what Steve Jacobson's nickname is. He says no, he calls him Steve. That's his name. But he says they are on a first-name basis. But he thought about it. And he says, well, I may have used the term Jake. He also calls Kurt Bunch KB. You know, which is a lot of people. I hear Marlissa Ferrer calling Kurt Bunch KB all the time. He was asked if... Now, remember, too, why he was asked this question. He was asked if he confessed to Patrick Hampton in Tuolumne County Jail. Now, he says no. Now, Patrick Hampton, a witness in this case, was put in the same cell, they were cellies, with Robert Woody in Tuolumne County. They were both in protective custody. Apparently they have limited room for protective custody up there in Tuolumne County. So they put them in, two witnesses in the same case, in a homicide case. They put them together. And Patrick Hampton had made a comment to Steve Jacobson that Robert Woody had confessed to killing Corey Kaufman to him in the cell. Steve Jacobson shined him on. He had information on a homicide, but it wasn't part of their narrative. I don't know. Somebody tell me. I don't know. And Steve Jacobson says, well, I don't want to hear this right now. There's a confession in a homicide that he didn't want to hear. They asked about Jai Gohil asked about the Johnson Street incident and the threats that were made at Corey Kaufman's house. Dombey and Jacobson asked about that in the August 2015 interview. Robert Woody did not recall what the investigators were asking, and then he goes, oh yeah, that's right, that's correct. Sergeant Dombey, he said, was telling him over and over again that he was there making those threats to Corey Kaufman. Remember, when they made the milk run to donate the milk to the church, they had said, Kim Stout had said that she saw them over on Johnson Street after the milk run, and he had made a threat to Corey Kaufman, your ass is grass, blah, that type of thing. But he didn't recall if he told Dombey that, or refresh his memory with a transcript or of the preliminary hearing. He says, he said correct. Yeah, they did say that he did tell the investigators he didn't recall about that. His memory on 8/15 of 15 Jai Gohel asked him, is his memory kind of fuzzy? You're not getting what's going on here? He didn't think about that apparently until Kim Stout, who said she was walking down the street and saw the altercation. She was a few houses down, and then she approached Corey Kaufman afterwards, and Corey Kaufman said that they had made a threat. Somebody just sent me a text. I think it's going to be a good question. Hold on. Okay, I'll get back to that right at the end. Remind me if I forget. It's a good comment. I'm almost done here with my notes. Kim Stout, he had heard somehow, that Kim Stout had made a statement to Kurt Bunch about the threats that were made, and she saw them leaving the Johnson Street, and he didn't think he believed that had happened until the Kim Stout statement. If you heard that statement, the interview that was made by Kim Stout to Kurt Bunch, you'd really be, seriously, you'd be interested in hearing that statement, the way it was said and the way it was choreographed. Somebody in his family had told him that Kim Stout had gone to their home and she told Kurt Bunch about it on Johnson Street, making the threats. His memory, he said, was jogged by Kim Stout when she saw him on South Johnson. He didn't recall that. Again, refreshing with a preliminary transcript. But he said, yeah, it does refresh his memory that Kim Stout had told his family. He has known Kim Stout for 20 years. He's had a long relationship with Kim Stout. And Kim Stout had testified they saw each other almost every day and stuff like that out there. So that was, I had to leave just about 5 minutes early. I had to take care of some business downtown. And so I left, but I saw the jurors leaving almost right behind me, so they were probably done. And any questions, go ahead and ask. This message I just got, it says, please tell me that the jury is seeing what's going on here. They can't possibly believe anything that comes out of his mouth. I personally, and I spend as much time as I can watching the jury. My opinion of the jury is they are a good group of people. I saw some things when Jim Cook was testifying that immediately took credibility away from Jim Cook with them. I think they're pretty astute. I think they see what's going on. They see the character assassination that went on for 8 months without any type of facts or information put out there. Typically, in a homicide case, the district attorney will the prosecutor will put the blood and guts out there right away to inflame the jury and build off of that. She didn't do that. She started throwing character evidence around, saying Frank Carson had altercations with Cooley, and he had altercations with all these other people. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. I wasn't there. But that doesn't mean he went to the point of killing anybody. They don't have any evidence. There's no physical evidence. The jury has seen this. I think the jury is catching on to what's going on here. I honestly do. I look at them. They're very attentive. They're still writing notes, but they're not writing as much notes. When Jim Cook took the stand, the jury was kind of like, okay, we got an expert on the stand. We're actually going to hear some information now. Now, when he started his Kanaqwap routine, he wouldn't answer any questions as posed. and playing the game that he played, they lost a jury very quickly. With all these witnesses they threw in there, they're already with Mauna Kea and Hampton, these guys that just want to get up there for the show and have some fun, and Kathy Granolds and some of these other people, Michael Cooley and these, they had the jury, was getting tired of this crap, and it was day after day after day. And then they got an expert on the stand who wouldn't answer a question. They got really tired of that very quickly. Now, they're very attentive to Robert Woody, but I think they're seeing right through this. I think they've already seen through this. If the district attorney's office thought Robert Woody was going to save their case, he hasn't done it. And I'll call it as I see it. I don't have a dog in this race, but this district attorney office is getting belted in the chin on this one. They took a case that had no business in the courtroom. It had no business getting past a preliminary hearing, but that's a story for another day. And I think a lot of you already know how I feel about that one. But I think the jury's seeing through it. So I think they're a smart group of people. I think they've seen enough. This jury has been sitting there since January. That's when jury selection started. Okay, and that took 4 months. January 8th was the first day the jurors came in for voir dire. And then they started opening arguments in April. The jury has been sitting there for a year. Okay, you think they're pleased about being... And half the day they're sitting downstairs. They're not even getting to the courtroom, or can't get into the courtroom because the judge isn't there. So I think the jury's seeing through a lot of this stuff. And just my personal opinion, I really think they're a good group of people, and I think they're going to be onto this. So, and I don't think it's a jury that the district attorney particularly cares for. So that's all I've got. Any other questions, speak up now, forever hold your peace. Don't forget I have the donation button at the bottom of every report when I remember to put it in. It's a PayPal donation. The address of my post office box is also on the website. If you want to use snail mail, send me a check. It's Marty Carlson Services. You can make cash donations. It's all reported. And or you can make the PayPal. Remember my sponsor, Merced Tile Supply, and good guy over there. He's got a good thing going on over there. He's really got some good stuff, and I'm not just saying that. I've been there a couple times, and good stuff, good guy. So remember this, my sponsor, and anybody else wants a sponsor, let me know. We can work out an agreement. So that's all I got. Remember what I always say. Don't take my word for it. There hasn't been a lot of people in court. There'd be nice to see a few more people in court. So don't take my word for it. Come to court and find out for yourself. Good night, everybody.